I think we got it. We are live now, and apologies if you were tuning in before and now to do it again. Hopefully, you can join us. I'm Jordan Zacher, and I am editor, writer, publisher. I guess all job descriptions of Progress Report, and I'm here with Tram Nguyen, who is a state representative in Massachusetts, running for Congress. She is running in Massachusetts 6 district, one of many people running. Well, the most to me the most exciting, well, obviously, was why you're here. But one of like I was looking at the list of like candidates. I knew a few of the names, but I was like, how did you even have a debate? How do you have a debate with that many people? It's just wild.
Well, I mean, we've had candidates forums, which is slightly different.
Yes.
I'm actually really excited for debates. I'm a litigator and
Right.
negotiator, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
You have the backstory of us doing this is that my friend Amanda, who runs Run for Something, reached out to me and she mentioned you because she did some of my live streams. I've had other candidates a lot, and she mentioned you, and your biography is incredible, right? Your
Thank you.
personal life and professional life, the stuff you've done, um, and like it's one of the things you're like, oh, where do I zero in on? Right? There's a lot to ask, a lot of things to ask. So maybe just like you work for I mean, you're in the state legislature right now. You've been there for about 6 years or so. Tell me about the easiest question in the world is like, why did you decide to run for Congress? We'll go further back later, but tell me why you decided to run.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really glad you brought up Amanda because she was one of the first people to endorse me when I first ran for state rep back, 8 years ago. And I have to say, the reason why I ran in the first place is the same reason I'm running now. Is I believe in a government that should work for everyday people and not the powerful few. Especially as someone who grew up in a working class refugee family where we had to stretch every dollar just to get by. I know what it's like for working families, what they're going through right now. And in this moment, we're seeing corporate greed driving up price for everything from rent to groceries to giant corporations paying very little in taxes and not paying their fair share, right? And these are the things that I've been working on my entire career. I've spent the last 8 years in the legislature taking on tough fights, beating MAGA extremists, and actually rolling up my sleeves and passing legislation. Frankly, when our government's in crisis now, we don't need another DC insider. We don't need people playing by the same playbook. We need battle tested fighters and public servants. People who've actually done the work, have been here, and know what it's like to deliver structural change. And so, with everything that's happening right now, the fight has to be from the people and someone who has the lived experience and also the professional experience to be able to get things done and make sure that people can believe that government can work for them again.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very rare situation where this Massachusetts sixth, as it is now, is up for an open seat because Seth Moulton is running for Senate. Like, when he decided to do that, when he jumped in, was it like, oh my god, I feel like everyone scrambled to jump in. Like, what was it? What was that? Was it? Had you been thinking about it? Had you been aiming for it? Was it something you knew was going to happen?
We were hearing rumors about this, and interestingly, I mean, honestly, I call myself a accidental politician. Like I've never thought I was going to be in politics ever. If you'd asked me this 10 years ago, that would not have been on, my bingo card at all. I was very happy being a litigator, working at Greater Boston Legal Services. But when I ran in 2018, it was again that moment where I felt like our government was in crisis and I felt a calling, right? Just to go back to, that moment where I made the initial decision to run in 2017, if you will, I felt like people had to have a choice. And back then, I took on a MAGA Republican who filed a bill that would have allowed police officers to stop anyone who looks illegal. And, as an immigrant, as an
Yeah.
immigration lawyer, as someone who cares about civil rights and human rights, I was outraged. And so I decided to run then. And I really, in the last 8 years, really saw the power of policy and how good policies could help people and bad policies could hurt them. And so that leads us to today. The work that I've been able to do at the state level need to be done at the federal level. And I am just tired of DC insiders. I'm tired of multimillionaires looking to buy seats. We need someone who can run a people powered campaign, who has a track record. And in fact, I this past summer, I was working with some of my legislative colleagues from across the country on initiative to try to help women immigrants and newcomers to run for higher office from the state and local level to run for Congress. And as we were working on this seat literally opened up and they looked
Oh
at
wow.
me and they were like, "That's you." So I need to walk the talk. And
Yeah.
it's true. When you're trying to build this pipeline of people with lived experiences, of people who have dedicated their careers to serving others,
Mhm.
um, if you're going to build that pipeline, you need to show that this can be done. Right. And
Yeah.
so here we are. I started campaigning in October. I was really excited to see the level of support as I was announcing my candidacy, and we're only building on that momentum. In fact, the latest poll that's actually not mine, it's opponents' poll, show that we're leading, which is so exciting for us.
That is really exciting, and I mean, it's a big race. There's a lot of money in the race. You talked about DC Insider. There's certainly some of them running in this race. But I want to focus a little bit more. There's a reason why you worked in public service. You mentioned being a refugee family. Your family was in Vietnam. I think your dad was a prisoner of war for a while, and so your career speaks for itself. I don't want to be like, so tell me about your family, but kind of because that's the kind of it's an incredible backstory. And I'm sure informs everything that you do to some degree.
I know, absolutely. I always start with my lived experience and my life story because I am shaped by it. I came to the US when I was 5 years old as a political refugee from Vietnam. Like you said, my dad served as a political prisoner for 8 years. He served with the Americans during the Vietnam War. And so after the war ended, they rounded everyone up, including him. He was a officer and served a long time there. And so when he got out, essentially, we lost everything. And I lived in abject poverty in Vietnam until I was 5 years old. We came right here to Massachusetts and really benefited from a lot of our community and government resources. And we lived in public housing. My father was able to. My Both my parents were able to learn English at the Northern Essex Community College here, and they helped him get jobs. And my parents were working just 2 to 3 jobs, trying barely making minimum wage, and certainly didn't have access to benefits like healthcare and otherwise. And seeing that really shaped me into who I am, because I understand the struggles of immigrant working class people. I know what it's like to wait for my dad to come home from delivering pizza and Chinese food. I know how they had to stretch every dollar. I know what it's like to stand in the food pantry line when they ran out of money, or see how much they had to worry when they couldn't make rent. So all of that really instilled in me the sense that if we invest in people, amazing things happen, right? I'm living proof of the American dream. Just imagine a 5-year-old girl came here not knowing a word of English, then became the first in her family to go to college and then law school. And then becoming the first Vietnamese American to get elected to the Massachusetts House and now running for Congress. That's not by accident. There's so much support there. And that American dream is so far away for so many people now. And I want to be able to see that, to give people the same opportunities that my family and I were able to get. And I think that that is something that we all need to strive for, that families should not just survive. They should be able to thrive, and policies should be able to help them get there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a different time then in the sense like we welcomed immigrants in this country and not so much now.
Mhm.
And so, being at the legislature and working at a more local level, like tell me about that, like trying to I don't know, like trying to deal with that and help that because I imagine it's really personal to you seeing the way that like ICE is functioning and what they've been doing and just like it's I'm disgusted by it, but like my third, I guess I'm third generation, so I don't have the same experience, right? Like so tell me a little about that, and like how that kind of like uh, helped color your run.
Right. I mean, as an immigrant, and frankly, I would make history as the first immigrant to get elected into Congress from Massachusetts since the 1800s. And I think that
I mean,
that is, when I
I
talk
wasn't
about
an immigrant then.
representation, right?
Yeah.
um, and so, as an immigrant, as an immigration lawyer, as someone who's been working in this space for a long time, all of these issues are very personal to me. I'm outraged. I am outraged that we are funding this rogue agency that is grabbing people off the streets with immunity, and talk about ruling by fear. I come from an authoritarian regime. I understand what it's like when they rule by fear. And this fear that permeates throughout our communities, not only impacts immigrants, but everyone around us, right? There are actual citizens who have asked me, well, I actually there is a host who hosted a meet and greet for us recently, and she was in tears when she said, my daughter is trans and from China, and she's a citizen, but she's afraid to leave the house.
Yeah.
And there are so many of these stories of citizens afraid to leave their house without a passport, without documentation. Like, what world are we living in that this is happening? And frankly, my family moved from across the world, from Vietnam to here for democracy and freedom. And I'm in disbelief that this is the situation that we're in right now. And so, as someone who's been thinking about comprehensive immigration reform and why we need to abolish ICE, these issues are things I'm so committed to working on. And I think I'm uniquely positioned to go to Congress to be able to contribute to that conversation. And for me, it's about getting the work done. It's about making sure that we're not compromising our values, but we are making compromises so that we can actually get comprehensive immigration reform, so that we can actually get results, so that we can actually help people. This is not sustainable. This is this world that we're living in um, where people are even afraid to go to the hospital, to go to school, to go to work, to get access to basic needs. That is just, I mean, it's unimaginable, but here we are. And so, as you can see, I get very passionate when I talk about this because this is something that I just want to be able to go into Congress to be able to do starting from day one.
And you mentioned comprehensive immigration reform, and like as long as I think we're basically the same age, and as long as like I've been, like involved in politics, following politics, whatever it is, and that's like the term that everyone uses. And I think at this point, I almost and it's someone this is like my job. I almost don't even know what that means because it feels
Right.
like the goalposts have shifted so much, right? Like it's like,
Excellent.
are you allowed to live in the U.S. here, right? Like there's one point like, why? So what's the process to get citizenship? And now then it became like, oh, are you allowed to like leave your house? And so for you, what does that mean? Because I think like that's something that like as we think about, let's say Democrats take back the House, right? Hopefully, probably. Let's say they get control again in 2028, and like I don't know, get guts. They're willing to try something. Like, what does that mean to you? Because obviously, like, you were a refugee, and now they're making life hell for refugees in the U.S.
Exactly.
Like,
They're not
what
even
is
processing the applications. This is where we're at right now. Asylees, refugees, people. I worked on UNT visas, VAWAs, Violence Against Women's Act. All of these things are essentially on hold, and the backlog is just years and years and years and years. And that's because they're not making investments in judges and adjudicators and not even making any effort to process any of these applications, right? And even for applications that before Republicans were for, right? The H-1B, the EB-1s, like all of these that are tied to unemployment, we wanted them before. Apparently, Americans wanted, Melania. What's her name? Yeah, Melania got
yeah,
the EB-1 extraordinary abilities visa, right? And
yeah,
apparently that
very
is
talented, I
something
think.
that we're very,
Yeah,
very talented. And so those visas have been going away, right? I did some appeals work for the EB-1s, and they used to be approved like at 99%. These are the creme de la creme, people who want to make investments in the US, and they're not even processing them. In fact, they're rejecting like 60% of them at this point. So it's like, we don't want investments, we don't want people there. So never mind those. We're talking about just, people trying to get a visa, a U visa, because they're a victim of violent crime
yeah,
or the victim of trafficking. They're not being processed, so they're now living in danger. So for me, we're doing some of that work already at the state level, forcing law enforcement agencies to actually give reporting or give the certification for people to even start the process, to not delay their ability to get the status that they need to start working, to feel more secured, et cetera. But comprehensive immigration reform is not only for the people, here, it's to allow for more people to come in as well. I'm a union member. I'm very much for developing American talent, but there are certain industries, like especially in Massachusetts, like the life sciences and so many other defense and otherwise, where we do need outside investments. We do need outside talent coming in. And also in Massachusetts, we have all these amazing institutions where students are coming in to learn from us, and we're training them on all these skills, and we can't keep them here. So that's why immigration reform has to have these things in mind of how do we make sure that we have the talents that we need to stay competitive, to support these industries. And frankly, like even healthcare, we're relying on Haitian immigrants right now. Like our entire healthcare system would collapse if they all leave. Yet TPS is being threatened, right? And I'm so glad for Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley leading the charge with others to try to keep that. But those are the kinds of things that I'm excited to be working on. And I know what I'm talking about because I've done this work for over a decade.
That's what I want to. One thing I want to ask you about is I a lot of the coverage I've done over the last, I want to say 5 years especially, has been focused on labor and workers' rights, and so that is, I know it's a special topic for you, something both in your legal career and then as a legislator you've been very involved in that. And tell me a little about that. I want to ask you, like, obviously there's been a lot happening there federally, but for you, like, what why was that important? And tell me about, like, the kind of stuff you've done, because Massachusetts has had some interesting advances.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually this is how I got into politics in the first place. I was working at Greater Boston Legal Services, and as part of that work, we did some advocacy work. And as a union member, UAW Local 2320, as part of Region 9A, I have done a lot of work to expand workers' rights, but particularly benefits like paid family medical leave. We were at the forefront of the fight to increase the minimum wage to $15. And I've been the lead to increase our minimum wage to $20. And I think that should be national. And so those are the things that I care about. Medicare for all, to finally untie healthcare for employment, making sure all members get access to healthcare. Um, and some of the work that we've been able to do at the state level for safety in terms of unionization, in terms of protecting the ability to unionize, but also some of our tests here to make sure that people are actually categorized as employees and not independent contractors who don't get access to benefits like unemployment, workers' compensation, et cetera. Those things are very important to me. And right now, we don't have those the same tests at the federal level. So workers are being exploited. They don't have the same security. But for me, immigration and employment are hand in hand. And that when you don't have comprehensive immigration reform and people are constantly living in fear, many of the low wage workers are also immigrants who are being exploited right now.
Yeah.
So many of those protections that I've been able to work on at the state level are things that I want to work on at the federal level. And of course, I'm very much in favor of the PRO Act to protect workers and supercharged unions and really aggressively raise wages across the country for everyone to be able to have a livable wage and be able to buy a house, have health care, have
My
basic
house.
needs.
It's you mentioned gig workers and being an independent contractor versus employee, and that's been a big thing with NLRB. It's been a big thing in different states. That battle's been ongoing. I was really interested how Massachusetts passed a ballot initiative where then Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, they stayed independent contractors, but they're able to unionize. And I heard people from all over the labor community had different opinions on that. Because should they be full-time workers? That's the ideal. Is it better to exploit the idea that the federal government uh, can't what do you call it, regulate independent contractors, so the um, state was able to allow them to unionize? Like, what did you think of that? Because that was, I know I don't say divisive, but it was an interesting plot. And so for people who don't listen, people who listen to me ramble, but Massachusetts passed a ballot initiative last year where basically Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, gig workers are allowed to unionize while staying independent contractors. And so that's the background context. So I'm curious, as someone who has so much experience in that, right, like labor law and whatnot, what your thought on that was?
So I think that the right to unionize is very important, and for them to be able to get protections that they need, insurance coverage, and so many of the other benefits that come from that. And the independent contractor piece is more for to give them the flexibility to so that they don't have to work full-time hours. I think it's a good compromise where we're at right now, right? Of course, I would want them to get more protections to make sure that they, could get unemployment, workers' compensation. But we all know some of these discussions are these are not like one bite of the apple at
Right.
this point. I think that it is important for us to get that right to unionize so that they can get the protections now and make sure that and many of them are, they have limited English proficiency. They might not know their rights. So being a part of a union would help them to better
Mhm.
understand their rights. And so that's why I'm in support of that. And I think it's exciting for Massachusetts to lead the way yet again on
Yeah.
these issues.
Yeah, no, in New York City, you have, like, deliveristas, right? The delivery people who are able to, have their own sort of, I don't know if it's an official union. I wouldn't even like, I don't think voted in by the NLRB, but it's something that where, they were able to organize and get better wages, and gig workers in New York were able to get better wages, but it's very much a state by state thing because there are no federal standards really, which is, so lacking. And so we saw the PRO Act die again during the Biden administration because Democrats didn't want to do it. I mean, we saw Abigail Spanberger and Jared Polis both veto, you know, collective bargaining, right? Right to work ending in Colorado was vetoed. Abigail Spanberger, I'm getting in the weeds here, but she vetoed, public employees getting to bargain. And so for you, you go to Congress, like, what are the big things you can do for workers? We hear a lot about like protecting workers, but then like nothing really happens. So what kind of things would you want to go and do?
Well, I mentioned to you that raising the minimum wage is going to be huge. I mean, the sub minimum wage that we're seeing at the federal level is not sustainable for people, right? And yeah, we need so much reform with the labor relations board, and especially, but before the PRO Act, I wouldn't give up on that. I mean, if we elect, you know what I mean? If we elect enough people to go in there who want to put people first, we'll be able to really give the protections that workers need, and also fight against like the right to work in so many of these states. This is outrageous that we have all of these movements from other states that seem to be picking up now too. In all of these red states, it's a scary time, and we're already seeing a decline in unions anyway. So I'm not even sure why they're launching the super attack on unions. Like Massachusetts is actually one of the states where unions actually have, organized power, and we're just really thrilled that we've been able to work with them in so many of these measures. But at the end of the day, it's really about making sure workers are at the table too to tell us what they want. And workers' rights is just intersects with everything else. Like, even when we're talking about climate, making sure that the conversation on climate and transition to clean green energy includes unions and making sure they have union jobs so that they have the training that they need and the benefits that they need. Or, when we're talking about affordable housing and how we build these housings, how do we build them with also union jobs and getting the workers to be able to have the protections that they need. And so all of these issues, I mean, we can talk about it all day because everything relates back to workers and how do we make sure that they can come home, they can make the money that they need, and they can actually afford to provide for their families.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating, when some Democrats don't really fight for that, right? It seems like such like a fundamental thing. And so thinking about that, right? There's, um, you know, people in the Massachusetts delegation, some are more progressive, I guess, than others. I'll just leave it at that. The gentleman who's abandoning or leaving your seat to run, or the seat you're running for to run for Senate, maybe not the most progressive. And so, when you go to DC, part of it's going to be fighting Trump, right? Part of it's going to be fighting Trump and Republicans, and they're the most unhinged. But there's a lot of battles to fight within, one battle after another within the Democratic Party. And I'm not asking you like name names or shame people, but like, how do you be a freshman? How do you go about that? Like, how do you kind of gird for that? And have you thought much about it? Obviously, you got to win a primary first, but there's lots of money coming into the primary. You're already fighting in that way, special interests in the Democratic
Um,
primary.
Absolutely, that's going to be a huge part of my platform is to not only hold the Republicans accountable, but also hold Democrats accountable. One of the first bills that I'll file is to end insider stock trading. That's both a Democratic and Republican
Mm.
issue, right? Why are public servants going to public service to actually benefit themselves and get rich? That is not public service. I also want to make sure that we're talking about ending Citizens United, making sure that we are working towards taking money out of politics because elected officials should be responding to people, not special interests. And I'm very concerned about the amount of money that's being poured into CD6. Like, why do execs of Palantir
Yeah.
or Blackstone want to throw all this money into this district rather than letting the people actually elect who they would want to represent them in Congress?
Yeah, one of the people who's running has gotten a lot of donations from Palantir executives, other groups like that, and like, you know, I'm not gonna impugn or demean, but there's an element of like why are they donating? Like, doesn't that tell you something about the candidates? So I'm curious, like, how have you seen it impact the race? I mean, it's a wide open race. It's a lot of people running. very very active. But like, have you seen money already just impact it?
Well, that's the problem. Something that the Democratic Party has been doing that's literally been pissing off people is this whole anointment situation, right? We need to allow people to run. We need to allow them to run their race without the establishment trying to pick the next person in line. And I think people are sick and tired of that. So how we're seeing, like, I mean, the amount of money coming in is a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, they have a lot of money to get their message out there. But on the other hand, it's causing a lot of people to pause and think
Mm,
about, like, why is this happening? And also, for a lot of the folks that we've been talking to, they're very concerned about like who the congressperson will pick up the phone for. And,
yeah,
most of their money is outside the district, right? For my race, for instance, almost 85% of my donations come from within Massachusetts, almost 30% come from the district. And I tell everyone, I'd rather get $5 from someone in the district who will give me a vote than $7,000 from executive from
right.
Palantir. Not like they would give it to me anyway, but my besides, and so the money has really created this false sense of inevitability, which is frustrating to no end because as the two polls already have shown that I'm leading the way with a truly people powered campaign. And we're cutting through that noise, but we're spending so much time and effort cutting through that, all that noise. And even some people who want to support my campaign are saying like, oh, well, that person with a lot of money is going to win. And I'm like, have you seen the polls? Like, have you
Right.
seen them anywhere? What is their track record? What have they actually done? And what are they looking to do for you? And what type of leader are you looking for? Are you looking for someone who has the experience and the track record and someone who's done the work? Or you're asked, you want to elect someone who's just making these promises without actually showing that they've done any of this work?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be frustrating, even on a state level, right? There's lots of money in politics. Like it's certainly in Massachusetts. It's a Washington, really. And so I'm curious, like, you've been in office since 2018, or I believe. So, like, what has it been like for you to try and? I mean, you were a public servant. You were a legal, public lawyer, basically, for public interest. Like,
Legally.
to try and to deal with that, to kind of like work your way around that because it's not easy.
It's not. Raising money is the least fun part of running a campaign, but you have to do it because, I mean, it makes sense. You have to hire staff, you have to get your message out there, mailers, everything costs a lot, right? But I think that it is how you campaign and how you meet the people that's going to make a difference. And that's how, I raise, continue to raise, I continue to do what I need to do, but it's about building that groundwork. It's about going to certain communities that have been um, underrepresented for so long, and they want a champion. They want someone who actually cares about them, and so that's how we're dealing with the money part. I'm not going to raise as much as some of these people. Like one of them put in $2 million of his own money.
Oh,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I don't have $2 million. I worked at
I
legal aid.
imagine the self-confidence too. I put 2 million in my own dollars. I guess imagine the bank account and the self-confidence to do that.
I mean, if you're worth like 150 million, like what's 2 million?
Yeah, that's true.
But here we are. So, okay, so that's how we're cutting through all of this money business that's happening right now. Is that we are meeting people on the ground, we're having the conversations, we're going into communities that have not been historically involved in politics and having these conversations with them. For instance, one of the major cities in the district is Lynn, and that's a very diverse city. They have a large Haitian American community, they have a large Cambodian American community, and I've been working with these communities and, from as an immigrant, as someone who's done this work, they have embraced me. And that has made such a huge difference in terms of getting my name out there. We're going to win this race living room by living room of people just inviting their friends and neighbors to come and meet me. Essentially, with six people in the race, we can win with like 22,000 votes.
Yeah, it's true.
And
And
so if we do the math, I mean, they will be spending a lot of money per vote. We will not. We will be spending our time getting to know people and hopefully having more of these sorts of like events and gatherings for people just to get my name out there in an
yeah,
organic way.
And you mentioned Palantir, you mentioned some of these big companies like in Massachusetts, I imagine, especially the tech industry, the science industry there, like very, very prominent. I live in New York 12, which is where all the money's going against one of the candidates here from AI, all the AI money. Outsports is getting kind of getting nailed and also raising money off it. But in any case, like it's going to be a bigger an issue for workers, AI, for civil rights, for civil liberties and stuff. And I'm curious where you see kind of where you fall on that because I think that the ground has shifted a lot on it the last couple of years as well.
Well, absolutely. We need to regulate them. But, I mean, it's not just like a matter of like if, it's a matter of like when we have to do it right now. And Massachusetts is already trying to deal with some of the AI work, like, banning deep fakes. More recently, we voted to make sure that people are held accountable if they use AI to put out false information and impersonate certain candidates, et cetera. So we're trying to put protections there. But yeah, this is a very quickly changing landscape, and elected officials, politicians are not extremely well versed in this, and we're all trying to catch up with that. And as someone who's been very active with many of the associations, like the NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislatures, and otherwise, we're all trying to get trained up on this so that we can better understand this. Because the better you understand it, the more you can regulate it. And I would imagine that certain AI experts would agree that, just unregulation, non-regulations is not going to be good for anyone. And that's a scary thing.
Yeah, I asked because today, the president put out an executive order on AI, trying to like basically stop any sort of regulation at the state level.
Oh, oh, we are very much against that. We need regulation. I think I actually signed on with some of the state legislators to, counter that we definitely need to set an example here. We can't rely on the federal government to make these regulations. I don't trust it.
One, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but like think a lot about like, all right, so a decent amount got done during the first couple years of the Biden administration, probably more than people give him credit for. Things got undone. There's so much that needs to be done. And let's say Democrats take back power. Uh, that works out. 2028, you got to trifecta. Even in you go there in 2027. What are the things that maybe things we haven't spoken about that are really big priorities for you that you care about in terms of policy?
Well, I mean, for us, the most important thing is for us to save our democracy. We cannot rely on norms and conventions. We need to codify certain things, like, I don't know, no felon could be president. You
Sure.
Accountability for the Supreme Court, making sure
Yes.
they don't get to do whatever they want, including, going on yachts and private vacations and not being accountable. But also, I think the Congress needs to do so much more in terms of using all of the tools in the toolbox to keep the executive branch, like, and as a co-branch, like, because right now it just seems like the president is able to do whatever he wants, including declaring war on Iran without a congressional authority. So I feel like those things, especially as a lawyer, especially as someone who cares about the separation of powers in our Constitution and our rule of law and our institutions, we have to have overall reform so that we can keep our democracy, keep free and fair elections, and making sure that, again, people are at the center of all the policies that we do. And the John Lewis Voting Rights Act has to be implemented. We're seeing too many really horrible things across the country in terms of disenfranchising so many voters, and I'm horrified.
Yeah, I just did a story on the attempts to federalize the election, whether it's USPS not setting ballots out, depending on the people at the states come up with a list of citizens, like obviously like gerrymandering. It feels like this is like the one shot left to to get anything done in terms of like saving the government.
Yeah, so much to do. I am ready. I'm ready. I think that for us to save a democracy, for Democrats to like win back faith in our party, we can't just sit here and try to figure out like who's the yelling the loudest at Trump. We need to actually
Right.
elect people who can get the work done, who can get results, and frankly, who's able to even work across the aisle. Even if we can flip the House and Senate, it's going to be by a couple of votes. We still need Republicans, some reasonable ones. I'm not saying we're going going to negotiate with the most MAGA of them, but I'm convinced that some of them understand what it means to have healthcare subsidies taken away from their constituents. Like my mom, her health insurance, she's on a fixed income, she's retired, her fixed income is $1,000. Her health insurance went from $4 to $235 this past January.
Order income.
It is
Wow.
insane. So I'm able to pay for her, but what about the thousands of people out there who don't have someone to help them out?
Yeah.
So I'm convinced that some of these Republican legislators, Congresspeople, understand that it's impacting them, it's impacting their people, it's impacting people's pockets, and what that means for them and their communities. And so we need to be able to work with some of them to make sure that we push many of these things forward.
We touched on this a little bit, and this will be my last question, but the primary in Massachusetts is not until September. So you got all
Yeah.
summer, which, is good. You get your message there. It's a long, hot summer. You got a it's a long slog. But what does the campaign, plan look like to try and, you talk about being at the top of the polls, but kind of solidify that or consolidate or kinda break through in a way when you know so much money is gonna be pouring into it over the next 2 months?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a very strong ground game. We have people on the ground knocking every single day. I'm out there, but my main focus is to raise money. Like we have to raise what we need in order to get my message out there. The polls have shown I have the messaging, I have the background story, I have the track record. So as long as we can get my message out there, we can win this whole thing, right? And so that's what we're concentrating on is money and people power. And so we're recruiting volunteers, going out there to door knock. We're having these events, but also I'm trying to get support from folks like you, folks from across the country, $5, $10, just crowdsourcing essentially, trying to get to that number so that we can win the seat and actually get things done together. And so I'm just excited to do all that. And we're now full steam ahead. I mean, we've been full steam ahead, but now we're just uber power because we're so excited by the recent polls, just showing us exactly what we've known all along is that as long as we have the money to get the message out there, this seat is for us to win.
And isn't that frustrating to be like, we have to raise money? It's the first thing you gotta do call time. Like, that's not why you got into this, right? It's obviously no one gets into politics to raise money, for a campaign, but, it's gotta, like, there's so much you wanna do, and to sit around doing call time, it must be just, you do it because you got to, right? But
No one likes it. If you like it, there's something probably that you need to look into. But yeah, we have to do it. I mean, uh, and call time is especially important for candidates like me. I don't have family wealth. I'm not a multimillionaire. I can't just throw in, X amount of money into there. Like took a $42,000 job out of college. Like, out of law school, I mean, like that's not, like perhaps not the best financial choice in life, but like
I
that's
became
a
a
rough
journalist,
relationship.
so I know about bad financial choices after college.
Oh, right. But so this is exactly why the money just means so much for us because it means more volunteers. It means our ability to buy ads. It means that we're not going to get drowned out by all of this big, all of this money coming in, trying to buy the seat essentially.
Yeah, no, it's gotta be frustrating, but, luckily you said the message in the background and all that, and so I'll let you go now to go make some more phone calls, hopefully actually, I hope you're not doing it at 9 o'clock at night, but maybe.
I have to eat dinner now, which I
Okay,
want
yeah,
to eat
that's an
dinner.
important one
So
too. Yeah, it's God, I can't imagine just the sheer amount of time and effort it takes. So I appreciate you taking the time, and, how can people find you on the internet?
oh, yeah, definitely follow us. I will go to tramforcongress.com for more information, but also follow us on social media, Team Tram. We're very much into getting people to share our stories and making sure that the things that we're putting out there are being shared with others, and just trying to keep up the excitement and keep up the hope. And we really, really also want to get young people involved. I just think it's so important for us to build that pipeline. And so if you're interested in volunteering for us or interning for us, please reach out. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@trumforcongress.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Jordan. Take care. Bye, everyone.